The Rothschilds, Europe's Jewish banking dynasty. Thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. As rich as a Rothschild was a common saying in the Gilded Age. Their rags to riches story reads like many other great modern financial dynasties. A brilliant founder who forged a fortune and future generations who squandered it on eccentricities. But the Rothschilds have a few interesting twists. The Patriarch's 5 sons were sent across Europe to establish their own banking dynasties. They explicitly excluded their sisters and daughters from the business and inbred extensively to keep their wealth intact. Plus, the Rothschilds were uniquely vilified because they were Jewish. They were targeted by the Nazis and saw their art, palaces, and cash stolen. And they continue to inspire conspiracy theories, which claim that they secretly control the world today. Let's uncover the true story of the Rothschilds. Meyer Amschel Rothschild was born in 1744 in Frankfurt, then part of the Holy Roman Empire. His family was confined to the Judengasse, or Jewish ghetto, a single narrow lane packed with dark, overcrowded houses. Since ancient times, war, enslavement, and persecution have pushed Jewish people out of their homeland in search of a better life. 2 distinct groups emerged in Europe: the Ashkenazi Jews in Central Europe and the Sephardic Jews in the Iberian Peninsula. In the Middle Ages, expulsions in England and France and the Inquisition in Spain forced Jews east. Large communities settled in more tolerant Central and Eastern Europe, but tolerance did not mean acceptance. In 1348, the Black Plague wiped out almost half of the population of Europe. People had no idea that it was caused by bacteria transmitted by fleas, so rumors spread that Jews were poisoning wells. In Frankfurt, dozens of Jews were beaten or burned alive in their homes as retribution. In 1458, Emperor Friedrich III quelled the constant bloodshed in the city by segregating the Jews. They were ordered to relocate to a single street outside the city walls. As the population grew, the ghetto did not. By 1616, the Judengasse held 500 families, upon whom the city council imposed tight restrictions. They were identified by yellow circles on their clothes and had to bow when they met Christians. The ghetto had only 3 exits, which were locked at night on Sundays and Christian holidays. Rather than numbers, the houses were given names, like the Golden Swan and the Green Lion. In 1569, the family in the home called the Red Shield, or Rothschild, took that as their family name. By the time Meyer Amschel Rothschild was born, his family of 30 was crammed in a much smaller house called the Back of the Saucepan. When he was 12, both his mother and father died of smallpox. Relatives struggled to support the 8 orphaned siblings. They pulled strings to get Amschel a golden opportunity to leave the ghetto for an apprenticeship in Hanover. There he learned how to trade gold coins, a popular pastime amongst the aristocracy. Amschel returned home and launched his own business. The promising 26-year-old married Gutel Schnapper, the 17-year-old daughter of one of the ghetto's wealthier families. Only 12 Jewish marriages were allowed each year, so they were lucky to get a coveted license. Amschel invested her dowry into his business and created one of the first catalogs. His skills earned him the trust of Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse. Amschel handled payments from Britain to hire Hessian mercenaries to fight in the American Revolution. He invested his profits into government bonds and issued his own international loans. While he was expanding his business, Gutel kept his books and expanded the family. She gave birth to 19 children, of whom 5 sons and 5 daughters survived. Amschel proudly purchased the House of the Red Shield, his namesake, for his growing brood. Gutel was practical, frugal, and a dedicated mother. She had only a single bedroom for her children and a hearth only large enough for 1 pot. Still, she kept a harmonious home. She educated her offspring and ensured that they understood their father's business. Third son, Nathan, proved to be as brilliant as his father. At 22, he was sent to Manchester, England, with £20,000, $3 million today, to buy cheap fabric to export back to Germany. He invested his profits on the London Stock Exchange and established the first Rothschild franchise. Following his success, Amschel renamed his company M.A. Rothschild & Sons and sent his other boys into the world to found new branches. Thus, the Rothschilds were perfectly positioned to take advantage of the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon set up a blockade to keep his adversary, the UK, from trading with Europe. So the Rothschild brothers traveled incognito and stayed at seedy hotels while smuggling gold out of Britain to fund the war effort. Had they been discovered, they would have been arrested and even shot. Instead, they made a huge profit financing Napoleon's downfall. In 1811, the Grand Duke of Frankfurt made all Jews full citizens with equal rights, and they were finally able to move out of the ghetto. In order to make this dream a reality, the Jewish people had to pay the Grand Duke a massive bribe. Amschel financed it at a profit. He died the next year at 68 and was buried in the Jewish cemetery just outside the ghetto wall. Ghetto remained in the House of the Red Shield for another 37 years. She insisted that her children leave their own palaces and bring their children to visit her regularly. On her deathbed, a doctor informed her, "I'm sorry, Frau Rothschild, I cannot make you younger." She replied, "It is your job to make me older." Ghetto died in 1849, age 95. Amschel's will left everything to his sons and stated that his daughters would have no stake in the family business, not even Henrietta, who had worked as his cashier for many years. Thus, the Rothschild women were pushed into the shadows of history. But many still had fascinating lives. For instance, Henrietta, nicknamed Jet, was highly independent. Ghetto fretted about marrying her youngest daughter off, but Jet turned down all of her suitors. Fed up, the matriarch sent her daughter to England, hoping that her brother Nathan could get her to settle down. Jet did eventually marry, to a man of her own choosing. She was known for her racy sense of humor and was popular with younger Rothschilds into her old age. Amschel also stressed that the family must always work together. This led to a number of marriages between cousins, uncles, and nieces. In the third generation, 14 out of 19 marriages were between relatives. This kept the wealth in the family, but also caused genetic problems, including several cases of schizophrenia, referred to as the family blues. Let's follow each of the 5 Rothschild sons and the branches they sprouted across Europe. The German branch. Amschel Meyer took over the Frankfurt branch from his father. He moved out of the ghetto and built a palace, but gave a great deal back to the Jewish community. He often quoted his father in insisting that the brothers work together. Amschel married but had no children. When he died in 1855, 3 of his nephews shared the German branch. Fame opens royals and other celebrities up to all kinds of criminals, dangerous fans, and identity thieves. And they have to spend millions a year on security. But even us regular folks have to take precautions to protect ourselves and our data. We don't need to spend millions on a team of former MI5 bodyguards when there's Surfshark. This fast and reliable VPN keeps you safe online by encrypting all the data sent between your device and the internet. This keeps your personal information protected from big companies and cyber criminals. I was hacked while using Wi-Fi in a coffee shop, and ever since, I always turn on my VPN while working away from home. In addition to peace of mind, a VPN also offers some fun perks. Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries, so you can change your location to get access to content only available overseas. Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. Secure your privacy with Surfshark. Go to surfshark.com/teatime to get an extra 4 months free. The Austrian branch. Solomon was sent to Vienna, the capital of the empire. Jews were not allowed to own property, so he took up residence in a luxury hotel. He rented a suite, then a floor, and then the entire building. He married Caroline Stern and they had 2 children. He made connections with aristocrats, including Prince Clemens von Metternich. The prince was so pleased with the Rothschilds financing Napoleon's defeat that he went to dinner at Solomon's home. This was a huge deal because at the time, many Christians still feared that they would be poisoned by Jews. In 1822, all 5 Rothschild brothers were honored by Emperor Francis I with the hereditary title of Baron. In their coat of arms is the red shield, as well as a fist clutching 5 arrows, one for each of the sons. Solomon made massive investments in building railroads and ironworks. The Industrial Revolution turbocharged capitalism. A few made fortunes off the backs of many underpaid workers. Strikes were often struck down with violence. Criticism of this exploitation was widespread, but the Rothschilds were further vilified because they were Jewish. Solomon retired to Paris. He left his art collection to the Louvre and his business to his son, Anselm. He married his British cousin Charlotte and they had 8 children. In 1867, he secured a seat on the Imperial Council and encouraged Emperor Franz Joseph to codify Jewish equal rights. He considered his eldest sons, Nathaniel and Ferdinand, too eccentric to inherit the business. Ferdinand married his cousin, Evelina, and moved to London. She died delivering a stillborn son, and Ferdinand built a children's hospital in her name. When he died at 59, he left his home, Wadston Manor, to his youngest sister, Alice. While her friend, Queen Victoria, was visiting, she walked across the garden, crushing several flowers. Alice told the Queen to get out. From then on, Victoria referred to her friend as the all-powerful one. Third son Albert inherited the Vienna branch. He married his second cousin Bettina and they had 7 children. When he died in 1911, his third son Louis inherited the business. In 1938, Germany annexed Austria. Most of the Rothschilds were able to escape, but Louis was arrested at the airport. He was held in Nazi headquarters for several months, while Heinrich Himmler tried to squeeze him for everything he was worth. The still very tight-knit Rothschild family put together $21 million, $500 million today, the largest ransom ever paid to secure his freedom. The Palace Albert Rothschild was looted by the SS and became the headquarters for the Austrian Holocaust. In the lavish halls once enjoyed by the Rothschild family, 70,000 Jews who could not buy their way out of the country were sentenced to concentration camps. Louis spent the rest of his life in Vermont. He married an Austrian countess, but they had no children. When he died of a heart attack in 1955, the Austrian branch came to an end. The Rothschilds are still suing for property seized by the Nazis. The British branch. Nathan apprenticed under Jewish banker Levi Barrett Cohen. He hit it off with his mentor's daughter, Hannah, and they formed one of the strongest marital bonds in the family. As Nathan's star rose, Hannah advised him. She felt a responsibility to be an exemplary representative of the Jewish community. She was heavily involved in philanthropy and ensured that her 7 children were highly educated and cultured. Her daughter Hannah fell in love with a Christian man, Henry Fitzroy. The Rothschilds were outraged, and Hannah was forced to leave her religion, culture, and family behind. After financing Napoleon's defeat, Nathan was a hero in Britain, but he was surrounded by suspicion. There were rumors that after Waterloo, his couriers informed him of victory even before the Prime Minister knew, and that his advanced knowledge allowed him to make a fortune on the stock market, defrauding British investors. In reality, Waterloo actually cost the Rothschilds a fortune. Nathan had been funding Wellington's army, so a decisive victory meant an end to his wartime profits. Despite the anti-Semitism, Nathan remained prominent in British business. He prevented a recession by providing funds to the Bank of England. When slavery was outlawed in 1833, he lent the government £15 million to compensate slave owners. He also controlled a monopoly on mercury. Poet Heinrich Heine declared, "Money is the god of our time, and Rothschild is his prophet." Nathan died from an infected abscess at 58. Jewish schoolchildren and orphans walked in his funeral procession. Contrary to his father's last testament, Nathan's will insisted that his sons consult their mother on all business matters. Lionel raised large sums for the government during the Crimean War and funded the British investment in the Suez Canal. During the potato famine, he made the largest donation of £500,000 and was a hero in Ireland. At 28, he married his 17-year-old cousin, Charlotte, of the Italian branch. They had a happy marriage and 5 children. She was a cultural and philanthropic leader. In 1844, she caused a sensation by inviting P.T. Barnum to perform at her home. Lionel's mother facilitated his election as the first Jewish member of Parliament. But because he was required to take a Christian oath on the Bible, he was prevented from sitting in the House of Commons. It took 11 years of political battles before Lionel was able to take the oath on the Hebrew Bible and occupy his seat. Prime Minister Gladstone asked Queen Victoria to give him a barony, but she declined to ennoble a Jew. Nathan attended Cambridge University and was friends with the Prince of Wales. At a family reunion, he met his double first cousin, Emma Louise. She was supposed to marry their French cousin, Edouard, but the pair hit it off, married, and had 3 children. Nathan continued the family business and funded De Beers diamond mine in South Africa. He served in Parliament for 20 years, was an advisor to several prime ministers, and supported Jewish and Muslim charities. In 1885, Queen Victoria consented to grant Nathan the title of Baron. In 1902, Edward VII appointed his friend to the Privy Council. Nathan advised that World War I be funded by taxing the rich. When he died in 1915, he passed his title, but not the business, to his son Walter. He had little talent for finance. His parents kept him at the firm from 21 to 40, but they finally gave up and allowed him to pursue his true passion, zoology. They paid for a zoo and expeditions around the world. Walter rode a giant tortoise and drove a zebra carriage to Buckingham Palace. He never married but had 2 mistresses. His brother Charles had a passion for entomology. His collection of 260,000 fleas is now in the National History Museum. He discovered the species that carried bubonic plague. Despite his passion, Charles never missed a day of work at the bank. On a butterfly collecting expedition to the Carpathian Mountains, he met Hungarian Rosika von Werthemstein. She was an avid tennis player and created the women's overhand serve. Charles suffered from schizophrenia. He took his own life at 46, shocking his wife and children. His daughter Miriam was a noted zoologist and made numerous discoveries. During World War II, she worked as a code breaker at Bletchley Park. She encouraged the British government to accept more Jewish refugees and housed 49 orphans at her estate at Ashton Wold. She was a precocious environmentalist and vegetarian, and campaigned to decriminalize homosexuality. After rescuing her sister, Liberty, from an asylum, she promoted destigmatizing mental health and treating it scientifically like any other illness. She established the Schizophrenia Research Fund. Her younger sister, Pannonica, named after a butterfly, married a French diplomat and moved to Château de Bondon. During World War II, the couple sent their 5 children to safety in the U.S. and joined the Free French Army in opposition to Nazi occupation. In 1951, Pannonica left her husband and moved to New York, where she fell in love with jazz. She was a patron and manager to Thelonious Monk and Charlie Parker. Victor was a playboy and cricket player at Cambridge and was friends with an infamous Soviet spy ring, but was probably not involved. As the only boy in the family, he inherited his uncle's title of Baron and took his seat in the House of Lords. During World War II, he ran a spy ring for MI5. He continued espionage work during the Cold War while lecturing on zoology at Cambridge and advising Margaret Thatcher. He was chairman of the family bank in the 1980s. Victor married twice and had 7 children. Eldest son Jacob inherited the barony. After a family dispute, he left the Rothschild Bank in 1980, but he was involved in many other business ventures, including Sky TV and Blackstone Inc. His philanthropic work focused on preserving British art and heritage. Jacob died in 2024, age 87. Among his 4 children are filmmaker Hannah and businessman Nathaniel, the 5th Baron Rothschild. Emma is a professor of history at Harvard. Amschel was CEO of Rothschild Asset Management. He married Anita Guinness of the Irish brewing family. He died by suicide in 1996, aged 41. His daughters, Kate and Alice, married billionaire brothers Ben and Zach Goldsmith. In 2012, Kate and Ben divorced after she had an affair with rapper Jay Electronica. James Rothschild married hotel heiress Nikki Hilton, and they have 3 children. Back up to Lionel's children. Alfred took to banking like a fish in water. He was director of the Bank of England for 20 years. He never married because he was in love with Marie Wombwell, wife of an army officer. It was an open secret that her daughter, Almina, had been fathered by Alfred. He provided his child with a dowry of £500,000 when she wed the Earl of Carnarvon. He used the Rothschild money to restore Highclere Castle, location for the series Downton Abbey, and to fund Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. Leopold became head of N.M. Rothschild and Sons and took his brother's political positions because of his nephew's disinterest. His 3 sons, Lionel, Evelyn, and Anthony, joined the army in World War I. Evelyn was killed in action. Lionel and Anthony joined the family firm. Anthony's son, Evelyn, became chairman of the family bank and was personal financial advisor to Queen Elizabeth II. She knighted him in 1989. Upon his retirement in 2003, the British and French banks merged under his cousin David to form Rothschild & Co. Evelyn was married 3 times and had 3 children, including noted environmentalist and explorer David. Back to Nathan's offspring. Anthony worked at the bank, bred racehorses, and collected art. His marriage was arranged to Henrietta's daughter Louisa. She was shy, he was a womanizer, and they were miserable. Louisa loved to read and write. Under a pseudonym, she published a series of booklets called the Cheap Jewish Library, which was popular with the working class. Nathaniel moved to Paris to work for his uncle James. He married his cousin Charlotte and they had 4 children. Frédéric Chopin was Charlotte's music teacher. She and her husband purchased a ruined abbey and vineyard and transformed it into Chateau Mouton Rothschild, one of the family's 2 winemaking ventures. Mayer was elected an MP. His only child, Hannah, was the wealthiest heiress in Britain. She caused a scandal by marrying outside the faith to Archibald Primrose, 5th Earl of Rosebery. It was whispered that he married her for her money, but they were actually very in love. She supported his political career with her social cachet and hostessing, and used her position in the aristocracy to advocate for poor Jewish women. Hannah died of typhoid in 1890, age 39. 4 years later, her husband realized their dream by becoming prime minister. Sybil was a writer, artist, and eccentric. She spent much of her time in a tree, communicating with her butler through a megaphone. Peggy married the Marquis of Crewe and became one of the first female justices of the peace. Her daughter Mary was Duchess of Roxburgh. The Rosebery earldom was passed to Harry and then Neil, who were both politicians. It is currently held by Harry Primrose, chairman of Sotheby's Auction House, London. Neil was killed in action in Palestine during World War I. His daughter Ruth married the Earl of Halifax. Her son, Charles, is the current Earl. The Italian branch. Karl married Adelheid Herz and had 5 children. When he was 29, his father sent him to Naples, in what was then the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. Karl was the least financially savvy of his brothers, but he forged good relationships with King Ferdinand IV and the Medici family. He purchased Villa Pignatelli with spectacular views of the sea and Mount Vesuvius. His sons, Mayer and Wilhelm, inherited the Naples Bank and the Frankfurt Bank from their uncle Amschiel. Mayer married his British cousin Louise and had 7 daughters. Wilhelm married an Austrian cousin and had 3 daughters. Several of their girls were quite brilliant, but with no sons to carry on the Rothschild name, both the Frankfurt and Naples branches closed. The French branch. In Paris, James was the linchpin in his brother's plot to defeat Napoleon from within. After Waterloo, he was the preferred banker to the newly restored Bourbon monarchy and the French government. He invested in railroads and mining and made a fortune importing tea. At 32, he married his 19-year-old niece, Betty. He described her as an important piece of furniture. But Betty was much more than that. She was cultured, funny, and beautiful. She hosted a popular salon attended by great artists, writers, and politicians. She sponsored public housing, orphanages, and hospitals, and she was friends with Queen Marie Amélie. Following the July 1830 revolution, James offered the new king, Louis Philippe, a loan package which stabilized the new government. He was rewarded with the title Grand Officer of the Legion of Honor. But when Napoleon III came into power in 1848, he was not so kind to the man who had orchestrated his uncle's downfall. Still, the Rothschilds remained dominant. He built Château de Ferrières and purchased Château Rothschild. He died in 1868 and left his empire to his son. Alphonse trained at several of his uncle's banks. He was regent of the Banque de France for decades. He married his British cousin, Leonora, and they had 4 children. He had a rivalry with his cousin, Nathaniel, who opened the Château Mouton winery in Bordeaux. Alphonse purchased an even better vineyard, Château Lafite. A bottle of 1869 Château Lafite Rothschild holds the record for the most expensive bottle of wine. It was sold at auction in 2010 for $233,000. Edouard was a traditionalist and didn't care for his flamboyant cousin, Maurice. In the 1930s, he tried to push him out of the bank. After bitter negotiations, a buyout deal was reached. During the rise of Nazism, Edouard and his wife, Germaine, opened a hotel to house Jewish refugees. Guy joined the French army and was at the Battle of Dunkirk. Before Germany invaded, the Rothschilds hid their art collection on their farm at Château de Roux and fled to the U.S. The valuable art was discovered and taken back to Germany. Guy tried to return to France, but his ship was torpedoed and he spent 12 hours in the Atlantic before being rescued. After the war, the Rothschilds returned to rebuild and modernize their French business. Guy married twice, both times to cousins. He renovated the Château de Ferrières and hosted lavish balls there before donating it to the University of Paris in 1975. He bought the Hôtel Lambert and turned the top floor into his penthouse. In 2003, the French and British branches merged as Rothschild & Co. under David. He married Italian princess Olimpia Aldobrandini, and they have 4 children. Alexandra took over Rothschild & Co. in 2018. His net worth is estimated at 575 million euros. Gustav was expected to propose to one of his cousins. Instead, he eloped with Cecile Ansbach, and they had 6 children. Solomon squandered $1 million speculating on the stock market. As punishment, his father put him on bookkeeping for 2 years. Then he was dispatched to the United States to represent the bank. There, he witnessed events leading up to the Civil War. The Baron was described as given to lewd talk and nude photographs. He married his cousin Adele, and they had 1 daughter. Solomon died at 29, supposedly from overexcitement from gambling. Edmund married his cousin Adelheid of the Naples branch. He had little involvement in the bank, so spent his time on the Zionist movement. He contributed over $50 million to buy land, develop infrastructure, and businesses in Palestine, including launching the wine industry. He promoted Jews and Arabs living together in harmony. He died in 1934. In 1948, the nation of Israel was established. In 1954, Edmund and Adelheid's remains were transported to Haifa, given a state funeral, and reburied. James moved to the UK and became a Liberal MP. At 35, he married 17-year-old Dorothy Pinto. Maurice was the black sheep of the family and was thought to be allergic to work. Still, he inherited a fortune from his childless cousin, Adolphe of the Italian branch. His cousins pushed him out of the French bank. When the Nazis took over France, Maurice moved to Geneva, Switzerland, where he launched a new branch of the Rothschild Bank in the emerging tax haven. This was a wise decision, and Maurice became the Rothschilds' first official billionaire. He married fellow banking heiress Naomi Halfin, and they had one child, Edmund. He established the Edmund de Rothschild Group. He made wise investments, including in the Bank of California and Club Med, and grew the fortune, which he left to his only son, Benjamin. He was fond of sailing, Formula One cars, and had a heroin addiction. He married German businesswoman Ariane Langner, and they had 4 daughters, Noemi, Alice, Eve, and Olivia. Benjamin died of heart failure in 2021 at the age of 57. In 2023, with her daughter's support and votes on the board, Ariana became CEO of Edmund de Rothschild Group. She is the first woman, first non-Jew, and first non-Rothschild to run a Rothschild financial institution. Though many members of the Rothschild family still hold wealth and titles, they have fallen far from the fortune and influence they had in the 19th century. It is difficult to estimate the family's exact worth, but Benjamin de Rothschild was the only confirmed billionaire with $1.4 billion. For context, there are over 3,000 other billionaires alive today, and compared to the Walton family's collective $350 billion, the Rothschilds hardly have enough cash to live up to the conspiracy theories of secretly running the world. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other history videos. You can also join my Patreon to support my work and get early access to all of my multi-part series. Thank you for watching.